I stood frozen at her bedside, my fingers still wrapped around Holly's cooling hand when the monitor gave its long, endless hum. Not the dramatic flatline you see in movies, just a soft, merciless tone that seemed to stretch into eternity. At exactly 3:42 p.m. on a Tuesday, my mother-in-law took her last breath, and I was the only living soul there to witness it. The silence around me was unbearable. Down the hall I could hear laughter, the kind of laughter families share when good news is delivered. Children ran with balloons, doctors shook hands with relieved parents, couples clutched each other in gratitude. And me? I sat in a bubble of grief so complete it felt like the world had locked me away behind glass. No husband, no sister-in-law, not even a text. Just me, holding the hand of a woman who had spent her final days surrounded not by love but by absence. "Mrs. Walsh, are you all right?" A nurse asked gently from the doorway, her clipboard pressed to her chest. I could only nod, my throat too tight to form words. For 3 days, she had seen me here, calling, leaving messages, begging my husband and his sister to come. And for 3 days, she had watched the doorway remain empty. We both knew this wasn't about struggling with goodbyes. This was about choosing not to be present. When the doctor left to complete the paperwork, the nurse returned, pressing a small envelope into my hand. "She asked me to give you this," she whispered. But only after she was gone. My name was written across the front in Holly's sharp, elegant script. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. A single key slid into my palm, old and slightly rusted. Beneath it, Holly had written an address I didn't recognize. And then one chilling sentence: "They never loved me. Now they will learn what it means to be forgotten." I folded the paper quickly when the nurse's eyes flicked toward me. "Just some final thoughts," I lied, but my heart was pounding. That evening I finally heard from Travis. Not in the hospital where his mother's body still lay, not in the hours I had begged him to come, but through a casual phone call, asking if I'd remembered to grab groceries. When I told him flatly that Holly had died, he paused only a moment before muttering, "Well, she was never easy." His indifference hit me harder than the death itself. At home, I sat in the dark kitchen, the envelope burning like fire in my hand. When Travis returned late that night, he slipped into bed without a word. By dawn, he was gone again. But I had already made my decision. By 7 the next morning, I was in my car driving miles beyond the city limits to follow Holly's directions. The GPS led me to a gravel road half hidden by wild rose bushes. A rusted iron gate sagged open as if it had been waiting for me. Beyond it stood a small cottage, its once white paint peeling its windows clouded with dust. Forgotten, abandoned, or preserved exactly as she had left it. The key fit perfectly in the lock. The door creaked open to reveal a world frozen in time, shelves lined with books, photo albums stacked on tables, dust motes dancing in the sunlight that spilled through the curtains. And at the center of the kitchen table sat another envelope, thick and carefully sealed, addressed not to me this time, but to her attorney. I sank into a chair, the stillness of the cottage pressing in on me. This was no mere secret property. This was Holly's true home, her sanctuary, and somehow in the end, she had chosen me, her polite but distant daughter-in-law, to be the one to discover it. That night, I hardly slept. By dawn, the decision was made. I would deliver Holly's letter to the lawyer, and maybe then I would understand what she wanted me to carry forward. But nothing, not even her final message, could have prepared me for the storm that was about to break when her children discovered what their mother had truly left behind. The morning air was sharp as I pulled into a brick office downtown, Holly's second envelope heavy in my purse. Margaret Keller, her lawyer, had a reputation in town. Silver hair, immaculate suits, and a stare that made grown men stumble. She greeted me with surprising warmth. "Mrs. Walsh, I've been expecting you," she said, as though my presence was part of a script Holly herself had written. "Your mother-in-law was very precise. She insisted that all beneficiaries attend the reading of her will. That includes your husband and his sister." My stomach tightened. The very people who had abandoned her in her last hours would now be forced to sit and listen to her final words. That evening, when I told Travis, he barely looked away from the basketball game flickering on the screen. "What will—" She had nothing but bills. He scoffed, muting the television only when I repeated myself. "The lawyer insists," I said, "tomorrow morning." You, me, and Stella. His jaw twitched. Fine, I'll call her. The next morning we arrived at the law office in strained silence. Stella was already there, cigarette in hand, eyes sharp with impatience. This is ridiculous, she muttered, flicking ash onto the sidewalk. Unpaid time off for this. Inside Mrs. Keller's office was as polished as the woman herself. Walnut furniture shelves of leather-bound law books and a single orchid blooming in the window. Two older women sat in the visitor chairs. I recognized them faintly, Diane and Eleanor, church friends of Holly's. They offered polite nods but seemed just as puzzled as we were about their presence. When everyone had settled, Mrs. Keller began. Her voice was steady, formal. This is the last will and testament of Holly Elizabeth Walsh. Travis checked his watch. Stella crossed her arms. I gripped my purse until my knuckles whitened. To my son, Travis Walsh, Mrs. Keller read, I leave my forgiveness, though you have not earned it. The air shifted instantly. Travis blinked, his mouth twitching as though he'd misheard. To my daughter, Stella Walsh, the lawyer continued, I leave my wedding band, which you once admired. May it remind you that promises should be kept. Stella's cheeks flushed a furious red. Her arms tightened across her chest, a barrier against the shame crawling up her throat. To my dear friends, Diane Mercer and Eleanor Thompson. I leave my gratitude for the kindness you showed in my final year and a sum of $5,000 each. The women gasped softly, eyes glistening with surprise. And then came the words that made the room explode. To my daughter-in-law, Courtney Walsh. I leave the entirety of my remaining estate, including my primary residence at 47 Willow Lane, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, insurance policies, and personal possessions. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then Stella shot to her feet. That's absurd. She barely knew you. Travis's voice followed sharp with fury. There must be a mistake. Courtney manipulated her. She was confused, dying, drugged up. There is no mistake, Mrs. Keller interrupted calmly. Your mother was of sound mind. She changed her will 2 months before her passing following a full psychiatric evaluation. She produced a folder, sliding it across the desk. She also recorded a video statement should this be contested in court. Travis stared at me with eyes that burned. You knew, he hissed. You drove her downtown in March. She told you it was a doctor's appointment, didn't she? And you sat there pretending innocence. I didn't know, I whispered, though the memory now sliced through me. Holly in the passenger seat, frail but determined, asking me to wait in the car while she handled her medication plan. The rest of the room blurred as Stella spat venom. The perfect little daughter-in-law. We'll enjoy it while you can. We'll contest this, and everyone will see you for the vulture you are. Mrs. Keller, unbothered, closed the folder with deliberate care. You may try, but you will fail. Holly anticipated this reaction. She turned her gaze to me. She left you more than assets, Mrs. Walsh. She left you a voice. When the meeting ended in chaos, I slipped the final envelope Mrs. Keller handed me into my purse. Inside, in Holly's precise handwriting, was a single message: forgive no one. Let them beg, let them kneel. And when they do smile, turn and walk away. That night, back at the cottage, I sat in the silence of Holly's secret world, her words echoing in my head. She hadn't just left me money. She had left me a mission. A mission to carry the weight of her truth, to make them finally see the cost of their betrayal. And I realized with a shiver this was only the beginning. The days after the will reading unfolded like walking through a storm. Travis slammed doors, muttered accusations, and stalked the house with the restless rage of a man whose foundation had cracked beneath him. Stella called at all hours, her voice shrill with threats, lawyers, court cases, public exposure. I stopped answering. But Holly's words, scrawled in that final note, repeated like a mantra in my mind. Forgive no one. Let them beg. Let them kneel. I retreated to the cottage. The place had begun to feel less like a ruin and more like a heartbeat waiting for me to bring it back to life. I swept the floor's open curtains and filled the air with light. It was there, while dusting a shelf near the fireplace, that I discovered them, a row of leather-bound journals, each dated in Holly's elegant handwriting. Curiosity pulled me into her private world. I opened the most recent one, the pages brittle yet alive with her thoughts. Ben has been gone 7 years today. Travis called for the first time in months. He needed money for car repairs. I gave it to him because I'm a fool who still believes a mother's love should be unconditional. Ben would be furious with me. her words carved into me. Page after page painted a picture of neglect, of silence, of birthdays and holidays spent in solitude while her children crafted excuses. A Christmas entry broke me. Made a small turkey anyway. Set the table for 4 out of habit, though I knew no one would come. I pressed the journal to my chest and sobbed. This woman who I had only ever known as distant, polite, reserved had been bleeding in silence. And her children, the people she had once carried in her arms, had let her die alone. The next morning, I found a wooden chest beneath the bed. Inside were bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon. They were written by her husband, Ben. His words, fragile with age, spoke of love but also of disappointment. Our children have become strangers, Holly. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small betrayals. Don't reward those who abandoned us. Remember what we built. Do what is right even if it breaks your heart. Suddenly, Holly's decision was no longer a mystery. It wasn't bitterness, it wasn't vengeance. It was clarity, the kind born from decades of disappointment. She had finally done what Ben had begged her to. She had chosen truth over illusion. Meanwhile, Travis's behavior shifted. His initial fury melted into something worse, false sweetness. He called me darling again, cooked elaborate dinners, even brought flowers home. But his eyes betrayed him. They were calculating, measuring me, waiting for weakness. One evening he suggested a weekend away, just the two of us. His smile was careful, rehearsed. I felt my stomach twist. He wasn't trying to heal our marriage. He was trying to reclaim what Holly had given me. And then, as if on cue, the court summons arrived. Stella had filed to contest the will, accusing me of manipulation, of isolating Holly, of poisoning her against her children. The words leapt from the page like knives. A manipulative opportunist, undue influence. I called Mrs. Keller, my voice shaking. She only sighed softly. We expected this. Holly prepared for it. 2 days before the hearing, I sat in her office as she pulled out a small digital recorder. With steady hands, she pressed play. Holly's voice filled the room, thinner than I remembered, but strong. My daughter visited today after 8 months. She scrolled through her phone while I told her about my scan results. When I refused to lend her jewelry, she called me selfish. She left after 20 minutes. I listened to recording after recording, each one documenting the same pattern of indifference, neglect, cruelty. Holly had built her own case in her final months, piece by piece, truth by painful truth. By the time we walked into that small, airless courtroom, I no longer felt fear. Stella sat stiff beside her lawyer Travis, behind her with his jaw clenched. But I held Holly's voice inside me. The hearing was short. Stella's lawyer spoke of confusion, of frailty, of undue influence. But Mrs. Keller dismantled every claim with medical records, evaluations, and finally, Holly's own recordings. The judge dismissed the challenge within the hour, even ordering Stella to pay court costs. The aftermath was brutal. Stella's friends began to drift away, whispers spreading through town. Her job asked her to take time off until things settled. Her boyfriend stopped appearing in her photos. She had set fire to her own life, and now she stood in the ashes. That night, Travis confronted me at home. Whiskey glass in hand, eyes red with fury, he spat the words like poison. Happy now you've turned my own mother against me from beyond the grave. I looked at him with a calm I hadn't known I possessed. She did that all by herself. I was only a witness. And in that moment I saw him clearly for the first time. Not my husband, not Holly's son, just a selfish, entitled man stripped of excuses. I walked past him without another word, Holly's mantra echoing in my mind. Forgive no one. Let them beg. Let them kneel. The cottage became my sanctuary after that night. I packed a small bag, drove away from the house I once called home, and never looked back. Travis barely protested, too stunned by the court's ruling, too busy licking his wounds to chase after me. But I could feel his rage simmering, waiting for the right moment to boil over. At the cottage, Holly's presence lingered. I found comfort in the floral wallpaper, the soft ticking of the grandfather clock, the journals stacked neatly like witnesses to her loneliness. I spent hours reading her words, tracing her handwriting, feeling her pain as though it were my own. But with each page, I also felt her strength seeping into me, like she was teaching me how to stand. 3 weeks after I left, Travis appeared at the door. The confident swagger he always carried was gone, replaced with a pathetic, rehearsed humility. He stood on the porch, hands buried in his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked, trying to peer past me into the cottage. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Holly's space wasn't for him. "The bank's giving me trouble," he admitted. "Without Mom's co-signing power, some loans are shaky. I just need a little help. 5,000 would cover the mortgage this month, and the car payment." I stared at him, the man I had once promised to love, the man who had left his mother to die alone. "Your mother left everything to me," I said evenly. "You left her with nothing. I'm just following her wishes." His mask cracked. "She's dead. What does it matter to her now? This isn't about her anymore. This is about you being vindictive." I shook my head slowly. "No, Travis, this is about consequences." He stormed off, his face twisted in rage. For the first time in years, I felt no fear, only clarity. Not long after, Stella's voice came next, not in person but through a drunken voicemail at 2 a.m. Her words slurred with desperation. "My landlord's threatening eviction. I lost my job because of that stupid court case. This is all your fault. The least you could do is help me out." I deleted the message without a second thought. The cottage creaked in approval, as if Holly herself whispered, "Good." The weeks turned into months. I transformed the cottage, guided by Holly's journals. She had once dreamed of filling it with life, of creating a place for people to gather. I decided to give her that. Contractors repaired the sagging porch, plumbers fixed the old pipes, and I painted the walls in warm colors. Over the doorway, I hung a carved wooden sign, "Holly's Haven." On what would have been her 73rd birthday, we opened the doors. Diane and Eleanor stood beside me, tears in their eyes, as the community stepped into the space for the first time. Grief support groups, elder companionship programs, community dinners. Holly's dream had come alive. "She'd have loved this," Diane whispered, even if she pretended not to. And she was right. Holly had been abandoned by her family, but now she had become a mother to a whole community. Her legacy wasn't silence anymore, it was connection. But Travis couldn't let go. 6 months after Holly's death, he called, inviting me to lunch at the Italian restaurant where he once proposed. I went, curious more than anything. He was waiting at our old table by the window, his eyes full of a desperate hope he didn't know how to hide. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching," he began. "I wasn't the husband you deserved. I wasn't the son my mother needed. But I want us to start over, renew our vows, rebuild what we had." He slid a small velvet box across the table. Inside was a ring. "I found Mom's engagement ring. She would have wanted you to have it." But the lie cut through me instantly. I already had Holly's ring locked safely at the cottage. He was still performing, still scheming, even now. "That's not her ring," I said quietly. His composure faltered for just a second before he recovered, shrugging. "It's similar. The point is, I want to make things right." I agreed to meet him at Riverside Park that weekend, the same place he had once proposed. His sense of theatrics hadn't changed, but I wasn't going there to reconcile. I was going there to end it. The park was ablaze with autumn color when I arrived that Saturday, the leaves glowing like fire in the late afternoon sun. Travis was waiting by the old stone bridge where he had once knelt and asked me to marry him. He'd brought champagne and 2 flutes, the same theatrical touch he always loved. "You came," he said, relief softening his face. "I did," I replied, reaching into my bag. His eyes lit up, expecting some sign of surrender. But when I placed a manila envelope in his hands, his smile faltered. He tore it open, expecting forgiveness, maybe even reconciliation. Instead, he found divorce papers already signed by me. "What is this?" he demanded, though the words were written clearly on the page. "Exactly what it looks like," I said. "You made your choices long ago, Travis. Now I'm making mine." "You can't do this," he sputtered, his voice rising. "After everything I've done to make things right." "You haven't done anything to make things right." I cut in, my voice steady. "You've done everything to get your hands on Holly's money. There's a difference." His face darkened, his mask crumbling at last. He ripped the papers in half, a childish gesture, meaningless. The originals were already with my attorney. He stormed away, muttering threats into the wind, but I knew. It was over. 2 days later, Stella's final plea came. This time not venomous, not threatening, but desperate. An email carefully typed. "I've hit rock bottom. I know I don't deserve your help, but please, even a small loan would make a difference right now." I stared at her words for a long time. Then I opened Holly's final letter, the one I had carried with me like scripture. Forgive no one. Let them beg, let them kneel, and when they do smile, turn and walk away. I scanned the letter, attached it to my reply, and sent it back. Nothing more, nothing less. Then I blocked her email forever. For the first time since Holly's death, I felt the air around me grow lighter. The months that followed brought life to the cottage in ways Holly had once dreamed but never seen. Holly's haven flourished. We hosted grief support groups, community dinners, and art classes for seniors. Laughter echoed in the rooms where silence had once reigned. Strangers became friends, neighbors became family. On the 1-year anniversary of Holly's passing, we unveiled a mural in the entryway. A local artist had painted Holly and Ben in their prime, sitting beneath the oak tree that still stretched proudly behind the cottage. Holly's head was thrown back in laughter, Ben gazing at her with love that hadn't faded with time. "It captures them perfectly," Eleanor whispered, dabbing her eyes. "That's exactly who they were." I nodded, tears threatening. This is how she deserves to be remembered. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in what had once been Holly's bedroom. On my desk lay a newspaper clipping, Holly's Haven marks 1 year of community service. Beneath it, a text from Mrs. Keller. "Holly would be proud, not just of the center, of you." In the quiet, I finally understood. Holly hadn't given me wealth. She hadn't even given me freedom. She had given me permission. Permission to walk away from those who chose cruelty. Permission to build something meaningful out of betrayal. Permission to define myself not as a wife or daughter-in-law, but as a woman strong enough to carry another's legacy. One evening, I walked out to the great oak tree behind the cottage. Its branches reached skyward, its roots deep in the earth. I placed a bouquet of wildflowers at its base, the same kind Holly once planted in her garden. "You were never forgotten," I whispered, pressing my palm against the rough bark. "And now, neither am I." The breeze stirred, scattering petals around my feet. For the first time in years, I felt whole. This story isn't just about inheritance or betrayal or even revenge. It's about learning that sometimes family is not the blood that abandons you, but the love that you choose to nurture. Holly's final gift wasn't money. It was truth. And with that truth, she taught me that walking away can be the most powerful act of love. Love for yourself and for the life you deserve. If Holly's story moved you the way it moved me, don't let it end here. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about the moment that struck your heart the most. And if you believe in stories that remind us of resilience, betrayal, and the strength to rise again, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next chapter.